Hey. Come on. Oh, oi. You can't win all of them. Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today in War Thunder it is time to do a post-mortem on the space race event. Obviously with it ending a few days ago, at least for me, now the only stages are really left, some people doing the crafting stage and obviously the market stuff. I thought I'd put my thoughts out on the event overall. We're going to split this into the positives, the negatives, and then the overall conclusion for the event. And also, if you want, on Twitch, I pretty much streamed the whole event. So, you can kind of see how many hours it took me. You can, there was a few bits where I preloaded stuff, when it comes to the boxes and things, but most of the time, you can see on the Twitch VODs, which are available on the Twitch channel, you can find in the description, that, that's the amount of hours, and that's the amount of stuff that it took to go through the event, and obviously, with the daily videos talking about, that day's play and stuff, you can kind of get a reference of where I'm coming from. So, what we're going to do, as I said, we're going to break it down. Let's start off with the positives. There was many things to actually like about this event, which, is pretty positive. The fact that, you have some pretty cool vehicles, the fact that the timing of the event was pretty nice, and also, as well, the general fact that all you really had to do to complete this event in its fullest was just pretty much play the game. Sometimes when it comes to challenge events, such as Operation Frost, Operation Heat, you can have those days where it kind of is grueling, when you end up, spending 6 to 8 hours trying to get that one thing, and then you're not able to get that one challenge done, so therefore you end up, getting 10 wins or something, and generally it can be kind of annoying. But with the space race event, the overall idea of it is pretty simple. Time invested equals reward. You don't have to, play too well, you just need 50% battle activity, so it's a lot more open to the general person, as long as they have the time on their hands. And because of that, it does mean that it's more accessible than some of the other challenge events, and that's, pretty good at the end of the day. The other fact is, if we have a look at the vehicles, I think the 279 is a great choice for this event, because it is very odd looking, it is very UFO-like, if you want to put it like that. It fits the theme really, really well. And, of course, you have on top of that the IS-7, you have the T-10M as the standard heavy in the tech tree. There is a lot of vehicles around the BR which are kind of similar to the 279, so it's not one which is going to really stick out. I also don't think it's too overpowered. The only vehicles that I've really struggled against them in is the Chieftains, because the Chieftains don't really have enough ammo. Well, they don't have the ammo types to deal with it effectively, but everything else around the tier, if they're firing APF SDS, or if they're firing Heat FS, they can deal with it very effectively. The one problem that I've had against the 279 is it seems to have, this new armor system on it, the volumetric armor, which makes it more accurate to what it's supposed to be. The only problem with this is it seems to have weird dead spots on the armor, and the protection analysis doesn't seem to actually match up with the actual armor itself, which is very odd. If you fire stuff like Hesh on the side of the turret of the 279, nothing happens to it. It doesn't go through, it just kind of disappears. You can go into protection analysis and try it yourself. It doesn't even fire the round, weirdly enough, in the protection analysis. So stuff like that is a little bit scuffed, but everything else is okay. I don't think it needs to be changed in BR. I think it's fine where it is, and once, people, die down with playing it, it'll be completely fine. The AU-1 is also a great pick. The fact that it's very similar to American machines that we've seen before, and the fact that you have tech tree equivalents in the form of the 82, the 84, and the Mauler is really nice. And also, being a 5.7 machine, it isn't just good in aerialistic, ground realistic, it's also decent in naval, because you can bring it along with your 5.7 machines. So it fits in all, game modes really nicely. It is also premium, and it gives you a different option compared to some of the other ones that are about the place, and it is a pretty iconic aircraft in the form of another Corsair, even though this one is kind of a prototype version of a later model. The SDKFC 2341 Another great machine to add to the mix, the fact that, we finally have finished the SDKFC 234 series. We now have the 1, 2, 3, and 4, so it's nice to see it finally in the game to complete the collection, and also, it's got a really nice 20mm on it. I know for a fact that it's going to take over bottom tier for a while, but then again, it's not like you don't have similar machines in the tech tree, with stuff like the Panzer IIc running around with the same ability, and also other machines such as the SDKFC 141, which are really easily available in beginners packs across the way. The other one, the SGB, the Grey Goose, the S309, I think is actually the perfect style of vehicle for the space race. I would put it as slightly worse than the actual tech tree equivalent, the Grey Fox, and with that said, with something like the Grey Goose, which is the premium one, you get access to premium, you get access to a little bit of extra speed, but you lose some firepower from the Grey Fox. So therefore, it's a really nice touch on, you can either go for the premium bonus and a little bit more speed, or the overall firepower. It gives you a choice, which is what you want in vehicles. You want this fact that, do I go for A or B, but both are equally useful, just in different scenarios. So I think that is the perfect, that should be seen as the archetype of the perfect premium for an event like this. The other thing as well when it comes to Space Race, as I said, all you had to do is, play the game. 400 minutes overall is quite a lot, if we're quite honest, especially when it is supposed to be per day, because you can get up to 40 per day and 400 overall. This is basically, 400, 400 things in 12 days, if you want to put it like that. So it's 4,000 minutes over 12 days. So if you want to break it down by day, by 12, then what you end up with is 333 minutes, per day. And if you want to divide that by 60 to give you the hours, that's about 5.5 hours a day of grinding. So obviously that's a bit too much in my opinion, but it's not something which, especially since we're in a time where a lot of people are isolated away from their normal lives, it's not, insurmountable, which is what I showed on, the streams. I was able to actually finish the time, within the, I think I finished on the 12th or even the 11th, which was kind of interesting, just to show you that you can hit the maximum on everything. The general workshop system is really nice, it works really well. I hope it is incorporated in different ideas for events, whether it be the Warbond shop or other stuff, but the fact is, when it comes to the workshop, putting stuff together, assembling machines, it actually feels nice. It does feel like you are part of the process. It does feel like that you are able to generally, actually build the machine in front of you. Now, obviously, this time we were building rockets for space, so it generally didn't make too much sense when, making rockets for space and then bringing them down. But even in the second part, where you create the turrets, the chassis, or the hull, and then the tracks, it was kind of nice just to see this overall thing. I still think it's a little bit odd that, you, for some reason, you trade a turret of a 279 for an SDKFC 2341 or the Grey Goose. I think that thematically doesn't work too well, but everything else works incredibly nicely, and I love the workshop system. I know people have an issue when you clicking through it over and over and over again, but for me, I understand why that's there, and it's just to slow people down, so they can't just auto make stuff and then pretty much abuse the market even more than it is already done, or you can't write a script to do it for you either, to once again abuse the market. So for me, it's fine, the way it is. I understand the clicking can be annoying for a lot of people, but, it gives you time, 10 or 20 minutes after finishing for the day, to be able to go through everything. The oxidizer and fuel, the fact that you got random drops was kind of cool. It gave you a sense of, the fact that you were not just, that you weren't just every so often, getting interesting things. You would get random drops. You weren't just, going along, you know, just a linear pace. It gave you random drops, making you think that you were going a little bit faster than you were, even though you weren't. The random fuel drops, I don't think they should have been random, but I'm happy that they were there. Meant that people could either get themselves some more Gaijin coin or try and create a 5th rocket, because obviously, at least for me, the maximum I was able to make was 4. When it came to the April Fool's event as well, because this started on the 1st instead of the usual time, like Battlefield Engineer started on the 11th, or at least the announcement was on the 11th of April. So because this happened on the 1st, that pretty much meant that they could incorporate the space event, you know, the one where you fly around, have a bit of fun, and this kind of pushed people towards playing that event. But they didn't make it that you needed to play the event to be able to actually get, you know, stuff for the space race. Instead, they tied the black camouflages to it, and I think this was the way to go. You know, I think you tie something which doesn't really matter too much to the event, but is kind of a nice little gimmick on top of everything. I like that. It means that people will play, you know, the April Fool's event. You had to actually play, if you wanted skins for everything, you know, every vehicle, you had to play about 300 minutes, but if you just wanted 2 of the vehicles, which it seems like the majority of people did, you only had to play 150 minutes. So pretty much 15 to 20 matches, if we want to put it like that, which I think is a fine amount over a few days, and you also got drops in those matches. The only things you weren't able to get were scientific data. I think the way that they did scientific data, you know, the first places was also kind of nice. You know, you didn't have to win the battle, which meant that you could get one either side of the win. And the other thing as well was it didn't really matter too much. It was something kind of just as a nice little addition to give people that, you know, tried a little bit harder than other people, but it wasn't something that was, you know, needed in the event. Operation Shipyard, you had to get the wins, and, well, you had to get the first places, let's say. I can't remember if you needed the wins or not, but you had to get the first places in order to be able to finish all of the vehicles. In this event, they kind of threw that out the window and just made the first places, you know, make it faster for you to create the rockets. So overall, it didn't really, you know, matter too much, but it was a nice little addition for people who, you know, were trying in the battles. It also meant that because it went away from the challenge system, what you could do is you were able to just kind of play what you want. I played a hell of a lot of stuff such as, you know, top tier or near top tier. You know, I played a lot of 8-7 Germany, I played a lot of 7-7 Sweden, I played a lot of stuff that was kind of out of my comfort zone for these events because I just wanted to grind. I didn't really matter about too much stuff. And yeah, I'm down about 1 million SL, but I'm also up about maybe 10 vehicles over the event just from grinding. Still got stuff like the G91R3, the TAM, the Rakuten Jagdpanzer II Hot, the Chieftain Mark V, the SDR V103C. Now all of these vehicles that I've either played or looking forward to playing, and that's because of this event. Generally for the challenge events, you go towards the meta vehicles, you go towards the ones which are going to be generally the best, and those are normally ranked 2s and 3s, which you have solid lineups around. And the problem with doing that is it can kind of screw over a lot of new players' experiences, where a lot of level 100s go down to those lower brackets and just basically stomp on people for a week. It's not too fun, you know, for those new players. And also, you know, we're seeing that with the SDKFC 2341 right now, but I think that's going to change, you know, quickly over time. Once people realize it's only a rank 1, you can't get too much out of it, and yeah, kind of as simple as that. But the main thing is, it was nice that you could play what you wanted. It was nice that I could continue the grind that I was generally on. The integration of the April Fool's event was nice, and overall, just the general system of just playing the game and getting stuff out of it more than the usual was great. It meant that you could incorporate daily tasks if you wanted to, special tasks if you wanted to, and the game modes that it was open to covered the majority of the game, which I think was good. So, a lot of positives out of this event, but let's look at the negatives. So to start off this part, I'm going to play two clips which are basically from a live stream which was done on the 8th of November 2019. Sean was there, who is the guy who does the War Thunder live streams, and he was there with CCO Kirill Yudintsev, and they basically answered a bunch of questions from the community. I'm very happy that they did this. It was actually a really nice live stream to watch, but at the same time, you know, these are the two questions that they talked about with the Battlefield Engineer event and gave a general idea of the way that they approached it.
I have the toughest question of all. Well, we'll see to that. Why is it even whenever the community says they don't like something, you guys still do it anyways and make it worse than before? The field engineer events just look like a blatant cash grab and extortion scheme from our end.
The field engineer event. So the field engineer, all events are basically not mandatory. They are optional. So it's we are not. Sometimes we are not satisfied with, for example, with players' feedback and their results. For example, last field engineer, not all, but last field engineer event have some things that we better change, and we will do. But all events are optional. You are not mandatory, not
obliged.
So don't play. So. But we are making them also for some players. You know, there are players who are playing much more than other players, and if you are making something that's easy to get for players that are playing, you know, let's say 4 hours a week, then and it makes completely like a automatically gain for players who are playing 4 hours a day.
Yeah. So next question, we already kind of answered. Crafting events have very complicated terms and rules. Why is this? It is required to spend a lot of time grinding parts and blueprints up to 12 hours a day.
Well, it
Why
was
so
answered.
complex? Yeah, because it's meant for people that have lots of free time on their hands.
So from the clips, we can pretty much take two things. The main thing is that these events are optional, which is of course true. You know, obviously when it comes to the events, you don't have to play them, but in order to get these vehicles, it is normally best to play the events unless you want to shell out some money later on. And also, the other part is that these events are for the most dedicated of players. The idea is to reward those who play the game the most in order to be able to, you know, kind of give back to them, or at least that was the general idea that I got from those clips. And at the time, I questioned this, because the fact is, when it came to the Battlefield Engineer event, I am confident in saying that that event was rigged. You can go and see all of the information you can yourself. You can go and look at the facts of the matter. You can go and watch the videos that I did on that Battlefield Engineer event. But in my opinion, it was impossible for you to complete that event because of how the rare drops worked. And when it came to the Operation Shipyard event, which was later that year, it had got better. That meant that you could actually complete the event if you got all of the first places that was required. It was possible to get all the vehicles, so that was wonderful, right? That was a step in the right direction. Now, with this event, we've once again taken a step back. Now they've put in maximum limits from the amount of boxes that you can get, and also the amount of fuel that you could get. I was able to get enough fuel for 5 rockets overall. And the only reason for that is because I got a random drop of one of the, you know, fuel and propellant things. So technically, if you hit the maximum, the fuel and the oxidizer, you could only launch 4 rockets overall, which would give you half of the prizes for the event. So this event, from the start, was set up so you could only get, from grinding, 2 of the vehicles. Now, something that Kirill also said there was the idea that he saw, you know, the most dedicated players to be more like 4 hours a day. Now, obviously, that's a random number, but 4 hours a day, I would definitely say, is a decent amount of War Thunder. It's a lot of War Thunder, if we're honest. 4 times 7, what's that? 7, 14, 21, 28. That's 28 hours a week. That is nearly 3/4 of the maximum amount of hours I'm personally allowed to work where I'm at right now. It is illegal for me to work more than 40 hours, so we could definitely call that, you know, a part-time job. if you want to put it like that. And from his, ideas, that would be, the most dedicated players. So let's see how many hours I played. It took me on average about 8.5 to 9 hours a day to get the 400 minutes of playtime in War Thunder required to get the maximum amount of boxes. So if we want to break that down, that's 9 hours over 10 days. That is 90 hours over a 10-day period. Now, luckily for me, I have had a very odd sleep schedule for many, many years now. I can deal with that while also working on top of it, but obviously a lot of other people can't. And the problem with this is even if you, try and put it down, because even though I completed it in 10 days where there was 12 days, you're still looking at around about 6 hours a day. So this is already over the estimate he gave when it came to the most dedicated players. And the kicker is of that whole situation is to get half of the vehicles. That is to get 2 out of the 4 vehicles of this event. You are not able to get more than 2 of the vehicles from the event unless you get extremely lucky, or you end up in a situation where you use the market, and we'll get onto that in a bit. So even for the most dedicated players, which of course, he says this event is optional, which is true, but your most dedicated players, which you've said these events are for, will want to play the event and will want to get everything out of, you can only get half of what is on offer. And that is because of these maximum limits that they've imposed. It is because of the fact that they have set this event up in such a way that you are not able to get the other vehicles. It is as simple as that. At most, because when it came down to it, when I finished my grind, I stopped getting boxes. I did a calculation. And that calculation, after working everything out, seeing if I put all of my resources in without using the market at all, I was short 23 coal for my 5th rocket. So just through grinding, I wasn't able to get more than 2 vehicles. It's as simple as that. Now, luckily, I'm in a privileged position, right? I'm part of the content partnership program. I make sure to let you guys know at the start of every video because I think it's important, but I am going to request those 2 extra vehicles. The problem is the majority of people aren't able to do that, so you have one of 2 options. Either you pay for them on the market.
All resource drops are completely random, which means that at some point you might have too much of something and then not enough of some other thing. What can you do then? It's simple. Go to the market. It will prove invaluable for your space exploration efforts. Have some extra fuel left? Exchange it at the market. Need more fuel for your launch? Go to the market. You get the idea. The M-A-R-K-E-T. The market.
Which is at least player controlled when it comes to the market. So, player prices are a thing, and therefore, the market isn't adjusted at all really by Gaijin apart from the keys. But what about the Xbox players? What about the PlayStation players? What about the players like those who have to pour money into the game in the form of GE to be able to even have a sniff at those 4 vehicles? They don't have access to the market. They can't do any of the trading stuff that is talked about, and that is a real issue. So they're just screwed from the outset. And maybe, in the future, there will be opportunities to get those vehicles in different ways, but at least for now, that ain't happening. We haven't seen that from previous events, and at least from this one, there is no sign that that will happen going forward. So even for your most dedicated players, even for the people who you say these events are for, you can't even get everything. You can get 50% of what is on offer, which is abysmal, in my opinion. It is terrible that is the status of this event, that the event is specifically designed to do that. And the only reason why it's designed to do that, because you know what? This never happened before. Even with some of the old events, Summertime Madness was an event which I believe was in 2014 or 2015. I'll just check here. Summertime Madness or Summer Madness was a ridiculous event. A lot of grinding in it, and yes, Summertime Madness Madness in 2014 and then 2015. They were events where you had to do so much work. And yes, I believe it was the one from it was either the one from 2014 or 2015, probably the one from 2014. It was the most ridiculous event in War Thunder history because of the amount of work you actually had to do. But you know what? If you did the work, you got the prizes. They were there. You were able to grind everything. If you were dedicated enough, if you put in the time, you got the prizes. In this, no, you can't. There is no way that you can do it through the game. Instead, you are forced to use the market. And this is a problem that we have seen when it comes to these events since Battlefield Engineer. Operation Summer, the IS-7 event, worked really well in this Build-A-Bear system. Because if you just ground it out, you got everything you needed. It was as simple as that. You got the rare drops along the way, everything worked out fine. If you wanted to get ahead, you could use the market, but it was guaranteed if you put the work in, you got the vehicles that were on offer. When it comes to the Battlefield Engineer event, you couldn't. When it came to the Operation Shipyard event, you were able to. When it came to this event, once again, you couldn't. It was set up in a way that you couldn't. And that, to me, is horrific. It is a disgrace that is how it is set up. And the only reason that it is set up in that way is so people get access to the market. And if people use the market, they can put money into it and therefore use it to get the vehicles that they need to. And I don't think that should be championed. And I know for a fact what's going to happen. They're going to come out, whether it's public figures who work for Gaijin, or it's going to be individuals who, will defend this event. They'll say stuff like, well, you aren't designed to be able to get all of these vehicles. You shouldn't expect that. It's not an expectation thing. It's just the fact that was how it was for such a long time, and now there is a sudden change, and that sudden change is because of the market. It is the fact that with the market being involved now what has to be done is we have to be able to involve it somehow for some reason, even though a large amount of the player base has no access to it in the form of console players. But I'm guessing just screw them, right? No, of course not. We definitely shouldn't screw them. We should make sure that they are completely fine. There'll be another thing that they say, which is like, well, when it comes to the system, you can sell stuff on the market. You're able to yourself make some money from the market. And it's like, yeah, but then I give up the vehicles. So what's the point? Well, at the end of the day, the way that I see it is I play these events not to make money, not to, do anything like that. It is to get the vehicles from the event. And the fact that it's only set up so I can get half of them is completely ridiculous, especially when you're expecting people to play 9 hours a day over a 10-day period, or about 6 or 7 hours a day over a 12-day period. That is ridiculous when it comes to it to only get half of the rewards. That is double the amount that you estimated as, something which would be seen as a decent amount of time for the average player to play. And it's just annoying. It really is. The other thing as well, when it came to the marketing of the event, when it came to, the videos that were on offer, they were all about, the market. And these events, the reason why it is annoying to me is not just because of the stance of, you're not supposed to get every vehicle. Why do you expect that? Or the one where it's like, well, these are just general crafting events. They're designed for people who really want the vehicles. Or, oh, you just need to spend a bit of money. One of the biggest issues for me is not just all of that. Those are issues, but the biggest one is when it comes to the community that at least I'm around. When it comes to the tech hub, when it comes to people who were watching on Twitch while I was playing stuff, when it comes to the comments, that you guys leave on these videos, what I saw was more than half the conversations that were being had were not about the vehicles themselves. It was not about the event. It was not about asking questions. It was about the market. It was about these. It was about prices. It was about, oh, I wonder if this is going to go down. Oh, I wonder if that's going to go down. You know what? I'm an armchair economist, and you have to wait until this day, and it'll spike up, and all of that crap. I hate the fact that these events are no longer about the vehicles. I hate the fact that a lot of these events are more about the market themselves. And if you want to do that, fine. But when it comes to, War Thunder itself, War Thunder should be about the vehicles. It should be about enjoying playing them. It should be about, getting some cool and interesting skins. It should be about research. It should be about finding stuff that you enjoy, not micro bloody economics. Which is basically, as I said, it was at least half or maybe even more of the conversations I had about this event. And it was just sad. It really, really was. The other thing as well is the camouflages. So I really like the fact that they integrated the April Fool's event for the camouflages. I really like that, as I said before. The problem is they are fully black camouflages, and what I've seen so far running around is there have been many times where I've looked at a 279, and remember, my eyesight isn't great. It could definitely do with a bit of help, and I thought they were dead, because they're black. And I remember back in the day that Gaijin made a decision where you couldn't increase decals to a certain length, so you couldn't cover your tank to make it look like it was dead. Now you have a black tank running around, which I see and I think looks dead, which also has, a stabilizer on it. It's also quite fast. It's also something which is at a BR where there is a lot of twitch shooting involved, and because it can just look at you and just blast you, it is one of those things where quick reactions are required, and if I look at something and think it's dead, my reactions aren't going to be that quick, are they? So for me, I think the camouflages are cool, but I would rather have them been a different color. I think they should have been red, maybe a bright blue or something like that. Just something which isn't black. I understand the idea of the black skins. I really do. But for me, it is just the fact that, it's just the fact that they do look like they're destroyed vehicles. So yeah, that's a bit of a problem. Oh, and also the AU-11 looks really, it looks like it's untextured. I don't know whether that's just the camouflage itself, but that one looks pretty bad compared to the rest of them. Maybe because there is no real extra stuff like there is on the SDKFC and the 279 and also the SGB. But yeah, that one doesn't look great, but overall, the skins look kind of nice. Hopefully, this is like changed to make them look a little bit less dead, whether they change the color or what they do with it. But it is just how it is. There also needs to be more clear marking when it comes to those camouflages, because I think a lot of people thought that the camouflages on the market were the 279 itself, or other vehicles like them, and I think a lot of people got exploited through that, and I don't like people being exploited, especially when it comes to their hard-earned money. So for me, yeah, that was a bit of a problem. But the main issue is that these events are no longer about the vehicles. These events are about the market, and you can see that through the advertising, you can see it through the wording, even on the workshop, where it talks about, oh, if you don't have enough, go to the market. And for me, I'm not happy about that. I really am not. The focus should be on the game, not a tertiary platform. Now let's get into the conclusion, and maybe some things that we can improve. In conclusion, the general fundamentals of the Space Race event are good. The actual crafting elements are good. The fact that the way that you earn stuff is also good. The fact that all you have to do, is play the game. You can, squad up with anyone you want. You can have conversations. These are all very positive things. Even the access to the market, I think, is fine. It gives people another avenue to be able to get stuff if they don't have the time. The bit which is screwed is the maximum amount of stuff that you could grind. Also, the fact that the event is fundamentally set up, so, you can only get half the vehicles, and the fact that, the emphasis is more on the market than anything else. But these things are easily fixed. You know, the fact is they could reduce the amount of grinding that is required to the 4-hour mark that Kirill has talked about, and if they want to do that, then they could also get rid of the maximum. Therefore, you'd get more stuff on the market, you get more vehicles around the place, you get more people being able to enjoy these special event vehicles, which at the end of the day is something that I'm happy with. I've never liked this idea of exclusivity when it comes to special vehicles. I think people should be able to enjoy all experiences in War Thunder, not just ones which they have personally been able to get. I've never understood that part of the, elitism idea. Just because I was around at the time when the KV-220 was an event, it doesn't mean that no one else should be able to get it, and that is exactly the same as how I feel about the space race. So the simple changes I would make is I would increase the limit to 800. I would make it so it's only 5 minutes in a battle to be able to get a crate, so you would double the rate that you get the crates, and then you would be able to get enough rockets to create the 8 parts that you require for each thing, and then give the players the idea to decide what they want to get, what they don't want to get, and go from there. It's pretty much as simple as that. Take the emphasis away from the market, put it back on the vehicles and actually playing the game, and all you have to do is, basically all you have to do is double the crate amount that you can get, which would mean that people, as I said, would be able to create 8 rockets, and half the time that it takes to get a crate. That would fix it. All of the issues which I've talked about before, and even Kirill talked about, the fact that he thinks that 4 hours a day is fine, this would actually fit that. That would actually fit that idea. It would also fit the fact that, these are optional, so you could still choose not to do them, or choose to do them, but it would just make it a lot better for everyone around. Also, obviously, it would be nice if console players get access to the market, but that obviously is out of Gaijin's hands. Gaijin has made many public statements in the past that they are unhappy with how Sony especially deals with some of this stuff, so therefore, that's not on Gaijin's end, and I think when it comes to the black camouflages, just change them to red, or change them to like a bright red. You can even run the Martian idea, make it a Martian camouflage, and when it comes to the scientific datas, because I think the scientific datas are kind of useless, maybe, let's say if you get 10 of them, you get a random rare drop, so you get like a titanium, you get an aluminium alloy, you get something like that, which I think would work much better than the system which is now, where it just decreases the amount of time your rocket goes. There is a bunch of stuff I didn't talk about in this video, which is also pretty good. The little animations they do, the little sound effects of the rocket coming in and going out. I like those things. I like that they put that extra effort into it. But at the same time, when it comes to, slightly other things, I just want these events to be possible for everyone. I don't want it so people can only get half of the desired vehicles. I don't want that. I want everybody to get an opportunity to be able to get everything. And unfortunately, with this event and the Battlefield Engineer event, that was not possible. Hopefully when we get a event similar to this later in the year, we will be able to get access to everything. Obviously, I'll make sure to cover it, and I'll probably do the streaming again, once again, just so you can see my experiences through it. But the next one we'll probably get is the summer event, and the summer event is obviously one which is challenge based, so that'll be kind of nice. But just please, for the love of God, just make it so when we do these Build-A-Bear events, just make it so it's possible to get every vehicle. That's all I'm asking. Even if you have to climb Everest to be able to get all the vehicles, that would be much better than the system that you have now, which just angers people, especially people like me. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I just want to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Chris Giltnane, Daniel Stanton, Jay Wilt, John Ryman, Martinez, Super Cacti, Trigger Hippie, Eugens Terry, and also Elove Goat and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.